Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Big Ten Almost Split in 1992. Here's why. What if I told you the Big Ten almost split in 1992, not in 2010, not during the Nebraska expansion, not when divisions were created, in 1992? And it didn't start with expansion. It started with money. After Penn State joined the conference, a revenue proposal nearly created a permanent two-tier Big Ten, one where Michigan and Ohio State would earn significantly more than the rest of the league. Michigan State, Minnesota, and Northwestern quietly pushed back. A controversial 1993 finish made this controversy even larger. And in this alternate history scenario grounded in real events, one vote nearly changed the structure of modern college football. Let me show you how the Big Ten almost broke itself in this alternate history. And let's set the table for the calm before the vote. In 1990, the Big Ten added Penn State. At the time, it looked like strength, but expansion changes revenue math, TV distribution, bowl payouts, national exposure weighting. Behind closed doors, conference leadership discussed adjusting revenue distribution to reflect natural brand draw. Michigan and Ohio State, the two largest football brands in the conference, were generating disproportionate TV value. The proposal? A partial performance-based revenue adjustment. Not a full break, not SEC-style inequality, but enough to signal a philosophical change. And you might be thinking to yourself that the Big Ten has always shared revenue equally, and historically, that's mostly true. But the early 90s were different. Cable TV was growing fast. Notre Dame had just signed its NBC deal, and the SEC was modernizing. The Big Ten had to decide, stay traditional or evolve. And that sets the table for the fault lines. Michigan State leadership saw the writing on the wall. If revenue became tiered even partially, the power hierarchy would calcify permanently. Minnesota was financially stretched. Northwestern valued institutional parity. This wasn't about winning championships, it was about structural permanence. If Michigan and Ohio State were formally recognized as revenue anchors, recruiting leverage would follow. And in this alternate history scenario, internal discussions grew tense. A vote was scheduled for early 1992. The proposal did not call it tiered revenue, it called it market adjusted distribution. And language matters. And you might be thinking to yourself, Michigan State would never risk leaving the Big Ten. And you're right, publicly, but privately, they floated leverage, not departure, leverage, quietly signaling that if the structure changed, alternatives would be explored. No one wanted to leave, but everyone wanted power. And that sets the table for the 93 flashpoint. And here's where this stops being abstract. In this alternate history timeline, the 93 season is chaotic. Michigan and Michigan State both enter November with one loss. The game carries Rose Bowl implications. Late in the fourth quarter, a controversial defensive pass interference call extends a Michigan drive. Michigan wins. They go to the Rose Bowl. Michigan State leadership believes the brands win, the rest follow. Now imagine that happening while revenue weighting is still being debated. Optics matter. The vote comes back to the table. Minnesota abstains. Northwestern votes against the adjustment. Michigan State votes no. The proposal fails by one vote. Publicly, it's framed as unity. Privately, relationships fracture. And in this alternate history scenario, expansion conversations begin years earlier than anyone remembers. And that sets the table for the expansion scare. Ohio State leadership panics. If internal cohesion is fragile, external leverage becomes necessary. Quiet feelers are sent. Missouri, Kansas, and even exploratory dialogue about Miami scheduling partnerships. And you might be thinking to yourself that Miami would never consider the Big Ten in 1993. Not full membership, but scheduling leverage, TV alignment, negotiation pressure, absolutely. Now the SEC notices, earlier than in our real life timeline. And in this alternate history model, conference aggression accelerates. The Big Ten doesn't split, but the philosophical divide becomes permanent. Equal sharing survives, barely. And that sets the table for the long-term ripple. Here's the real question. What if the vote passes? What if the Big Ten formally creates a partial revenue hierarchy in 1992? Recruiting changes, as does bowl leverage, and expansion logic accelerates. The modern superconference era might have started a decade earlier. And in this alternate history, grounded in real incentives, we see how fragile conference stability really was. You might be thinking to yourself that this is overstating one vote. But college football history is built on narrow margins. The ACC nearly imploded in the 2000s. The Big 12 nearly collapsed multiple times. The Pac 12 actually did. Stability is never guaranteed. The Big Ten survived 1992, but it was closer to fracture than most fans realized in this alternate history. In this alternate history deep dive, a revenue adjustment proposal nearly changed conference philosophy. Michigan State, Minnesota, and Northwestern resisted. A controversial 93 finish inflamed tensions. Early expansion feelers created a national ripple potential, and one vote preserved the equal share model. The Big Ten didn't split, but it almost did, and that near miss shaped how the conference approached revenue and expansion for decades. And this entire scenario is an alternate history exploration built from real structural incentives, real media trends, and real early 90s tensions. But it shows how easily the sport could have evolved differently. And if you enjoy this alternate history breakdown of how the Big Ten almost split in 1992, hit the like button so more college football fans see it. Comment below, should the Big Ten have adopted tiered revenue in the 90s? And if you want more deep dives into alternate college football timelines, check out the videos on your screen right now and subscribe for more, because the next universe might surprise you even more.